All right, so this was an incident from January of 2025. This guy and his girlfriend, and I guess his roommate slash friend, they went on a trip and they went to the Bahamas, and then they came back, and then these two guys broke into their home. Um, there's a couple different articles out there that give some information, and it sounds like this guy had a studio in his apartment. I'm assuming that means like a recording studio because he also mentions like a studio microphone, um, and that he thinks that um, his social media revolving around his studio um, that had a lot of popularity is what made these two robbers want to come to his house. Now, I think the social media part and him saying that, I think that is uh, something valid. I think there is something there with that. Um, and I think that possibly by him being on vacation, he was probably posting information about being on vacation. And these guys may have suspected that they were gone and that the house would be empty. So that brings into um, the topic of personal security slash operational security or OPSEC or PERSEC. Um, what do you share on social media and can it compromise you? If you post information online showing how much money you have, what expensive things you have, etc., and you show where that is at and make it easy for people to figure out where that's at, then they may come there. If you are posting information about you being gone away from home for an extended amount of time, there are people who may want to capitalize on that and take advantage of that. So when you're posting information, you have to be careful about what you post. You can have a balancing act of being proud of what you got, wanting to show off what you got, but also being safety minded and not showing exactly to everyone where precisely you live at. Now, him having a studio there, that kind of makes it more difficult for him. If he's running a studio out of his apartment, um, that's kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So the studio is where he has all the expensive studio stuff at, and it's also where he lives. So people know where he lives at. So if he is showing expensive things, people know where to come find that at. Um, Now, on the flip side of that, if it's out of his home, then it may be easier for him to guard that kind of stuff. Whereas if he had a commercial space somewhere and was gone all night, it would be easier for someone to break in just after business hours and steal stuff. So I guess for what he does, there's a mix of pros and cons there. But generally, you don't want to leave the cookie crumbs for the criminals to follow you back to your house where all your good stuff's at, right? Um, when you're out of town on vacation, I do not recommend giving live information about where you're at right now and the fact that you'll be gone for days in a row. I think that the best way to share your vacation is to do it after you return home, showing photos of where you've been at, things you've done, etc. If you post those things as they're happening and your privacy settings are not strict, almost anyone can find out that you're not home. And if they know that you're not home, they know you're not there to protect your stuff, and they can go in there and break in and take your stuff. So, him talking about in one of these articles about the guys, or him having a social media following on his studio, and him thinking that has something to do with it, I would say that he's probably right. It probably most likely does have something to do with why they've broken into his place. They come in through the kitchen window, and they encounter his roommate, I guess, in the living room. And that was something that that video show did not show. But this one does have some of that footage, I think, where they're interviewing this guy. At least I thought it did. Like I said, there's a few different news articles on this. Here we go. So there's his roommate being forced down onto the ground and being held there. So I don't know for sure if them breaking in through the window or coming in through the window is what woke him up, but I would say that the robbers making contact with the roommate in the living room and yelling at him to stay down on the ground most definitely woke the other guy up. So normally in home invasions, what you see, or what I have seen, is the bad guy comes to the house. They're tinkering with the locks, or they're tinkering with something, trying to gain entry into the house, or they do end up getting entry into the house, and the person who lives there hears it. They know there's someone out there, but they don't say anything. They don't do anything. And you can hear a lot of 911 calls out there where the person's on the phone and they're whispering to the dispatcher, giving them updates of what's going on. They can hear the door being kicked and someone's in the house, and they can hear them moving around inside the house. In a lot of those cases, if you just yell and make some noise, those would-be burglars are going to run away. They do not want to get caught. They don't want to go to jail. And a lot of them, when they're breaking in, they're breaking in into a house that they think is not occupied. So in a lot of those cases, if you just make some loud noise, turn a light on, that will scare them away. Now, in this particular scenario, once they've come through that window and then they've seen that there's a person in there, that's obviously not something that has scared them away. And instead, one of them at least has a gun and forces the other one on the ground. So the guy in the bedroom, I don't think it would have been a very wise idea for him to yell out and say anything, because I don't think that would have scared them away at that point, because they obviously came across a person and it didn't scare them into running away. And so if the guy in the bedroom had made some noise, well, that would have clued them in on the fact that this guy's awake, or that he's in there and he knows that they're out there, and they could have more carefully, I want to use the word carefully instead of tactically, because I don't think those dudes have any training in tactics whatsoever, but I'd say that they would have potentially carefully approached that room, knowing that there's someone in there, versus just walking to it. One thing to take notice too is the bad guy has a weapon. It looks like he has a weapon-mounted light. So he sees the gun moving around, there's a flashlight, or there's a light on the ground, moves around, and then in this video portion right here, where they get into the gunfight, you can see the weapon light, I think it is, moving around as that guy takes rounds. And of course, I don't won't call him a homeowner because it's an apartment, so he's not really a homeowner. But the resident here, um, he doesn't have a weapon mounted light. He just has a regular. He just has a handgun, nothing on it. Um, in my opinion, all fighting guns should have weapon mounted lights. Weapon mounted lights allow you to positively identify what it is you're needing to shoot at. It allows you to keep both hands on the gun, which is especially important for handguns because those are the only 2 points of contact you have with that weapon. Um, with a rifle, you got multiple points of contact, right? Your dominant hand, your shoulder, your cheek, your other support hand. Um, with a handgun, it's just your dominant hand and your non-dominant hand, and your non-dominant hand is not even making a whole lot of full contact on that gun. It's just covering up a little piece that's left over. Um, but what little you are able to cover with that support hand, it really goes a long way in helping to stabilize the handgun and allow you to be more accurate. When you get down to just one hand only, your accuracy is diminished a lot, and so I always kind of equate it to when you take one hand off the gun, you're slashing your accuracy in half, right? It's like 50-50. Um, so that weapon mounted light, it allows you to keep that good two-handed grip on that gun and be able to positively identify your target, know your target, and whether or not you need to be shooting that target. And it helps you to shoot that target in the dark because it's illuminated, you see your sights, it just makes it so much easier. Yeah, there are tactics out there to be able to hold a flashlight in one hand, handgun in the other, and use the two of them to fight at night. But again, going back to what I talked about, two-handed versus one-handed, at that point, you're shooting a gun one-handed. Even if the technique that you're using has both hands somewhat coming together, it is not the same as getting a good two-handed grip on the gun. So the low light tactics that utilize just a handheld flashlight, yes, those can be effective at shooting at night, but you're shooting a gun one-handed. And so the weapon-mounted light is just so much better at being able to accomplish the job. And so I think that the bad guy having a weapon-mounted light probably gave him a bit of an advantage over this guy here. On the receiving end of a bright light, it has a dazzling effect, I guess you could say. Or a blinding effect, right? You have a super bright weapon-mounted light pointed at you. You're not able to see a whole lot. It creates a photonic barrier, kind of like, you know, outside, no ambient lights on, and a car turns its headlights on. All you can see are those bright headlights. You can't see past those headlights and see inside the cab of the vehicle, right? Same thing with a weapon-mounted light that is super bright. You're not going to be able to see past that light, and so that is one good advantage to having weapon-mounted lights. Aside from just being able to shoot very well, you also blind your enemy and make it harder for them to shoot you. Yeah, they may be shooting at the light, but they're not going to be very accurate with it. Now, was the bad guy capitalizing on being able to have a good two-handed grip? No, probably not. He was probably holding that thing one-handed I wouldn't even be surprised if he's holding it sideways, all gangster style. Um, but having that weapon-mounted light on there, he was able to, I think, blind this guy a little bit and illuminate him some. And it's hard to say if the bad guy was using his sights or not, but at least he was able to probably more accurately point the gun at this guy than what that guy could be pointing back at the bad guy. If the good guy here had a weapon mounted light, um, a a good weapon mounted light, it's possible that he could have overcome the bad guy's light being shined at him and be able to see past that light. And so when you're looking for weapon mounted lights, you need to have one that has a really good high amount of candela on it to be able to defeat photonic barriers. Going back to that analogy I used of outside in the dark, the headlights on the car turn on and you cannot see past those headlights. Well, reverse that from nighttime and put it in the daytime. If it's daytime and the car turns its brights on, well, you can still see inside the car, right? Because there's enough sunlight out there to overcome that photonic barrier. Now, as the sun starts setting, less and less daylight out, eventually it gets to a point where those headlights are the brightest thing and you cannot see past those. So, with weapon mounted lights, it is important that you get a good weapon mounted light that has a high amount of candela so that you can defeat photonic barriers, either with vehicles, right, or in other environments that have artificial light, or even during the day when you're inside of a structure and there is sunlight coming in from a window or a door frame or something like that, and the target's near there. If you have a bright enough light, you can overcome some of those photonic barriers that make it harder for you to see the target. We don't get to see very well his handling of the gun, but you can see, excuse me, he just doesn't have the greatest grip on this thing, right? Like, the thumb's going over top of the gun. You can tell this guy has probably no experience whatsoever shooting this gun. If he shot this thing before, it's it's may been maybe a 50 round box, maybe at that. Um, kind of doubt it. Um, this is where firearms training really, or lack thereof, really shows. Um, so a lack of firearms training is very evident here, and if he had had better training, this could have been a different outcome, a whole different outcome. It may not have gotten to this point where he's getting shot at, because he could be positioning himself differently, um, holding the gun better, getting sights on target better, and shooting sooner, I think. Because in the article it talks about the bad guy shoots first, right? Um, and the way it's described in here and in the other article, it seems like this guy sees the bad guy coming when he comes in through the door or comes into this opening area and doesn't do anything, doesn't shoot. And the bad guy sees him and shoots him. And then he returns fire. So I think him shooting was just a reflexive kind of thing. Um, I think that he should have, as soon as he was able to have sights on the bad guy, he should have just immediately started pumping rounds into the bad guy instead of waiting for the bad guy to do something. The bad guy has already done something. They have broken into the castle, right? And anytime someone forcefully enters your dwelling, you have to assume that they are there to use violence, whether that is to murder you, seriously physically injure you, rape you, sodomize you, kidnap you, whatever. You have to assume that. Why else are they forcing their way into your home? And in this circumstance, where he can hear them yelling and forcing his roommate down and being violent, you have to assume that under these circumstances, they may not want there to be any witnesses afterwards, and that they may kill you just to make sure that you're not going to be able to identify them. So I think there was a lack of aggression on this guy's part, and I think that potentially led to him getting himself shot and um, it ending the way that it did. I think that if he saw the bad guy, had good grip on target, had sights on target, and was able to shoot first, I think he would have put that bad guy down. Without that bad guy being able to dump rounds at him and hit him, and then also hit his girlfriend, who was laying in the bed back here. And it's interesting that when this guy gets shot, he falls down, hits the ground, um, and is moaning and crying. Well, it doesn't show it in this one. Um, but the girlfriend is still under the covers, and you don't really even hear her screaming or yelling or anything like that. Um, so pretty tough gal to get shot in the back and then not move around and make a whole lot of noise. Then the bad guy here. It's unfortunate that he's still walking, but at least he can't walk very well. The other bad guy made it out unhurt. Not much else to really say about this video or this incident. Again, if you're going to be putting information out there on social media, you need to be careful about what you're putting out there. Don't want to be oversharing and giving way too much information to people. Need to control the flow of the information, who gets it. Not everybody in the world needs to know that you're going to be gone from home for, several days on vacation. Um, Firearms training is important. Not just learning how to work the gun and the safety of it, like the gun fighting portion of it, right? Um, so many gunfights. I think for the good guys who win, uh, so many of those gunfights are just fortuitous outcomes. They just got lucky. That's it. They just got lucky. And this guy, I think, although he got shot, I think he got lucky. That's it. Just pure luck. Like there was no skill involved in this, right? Like he was not moving around tactically or anything. He wasn't even holding the gun correctly. He just got lucky that he shot the bad guy, and that was probably enough to motivate the bad guy to no longer want to be in the fight. So firearms training is very important. And weapon-mounted lights. Weapon-mounted lights are extremely important. If you're going to have a fighting gun, then your fighting gun needs to have a weapon-mounted light. Uh, and, and one more thing to touch on, talk about incapacitation. So, um, this guy gets shot in the foot and then also somewhere in the back as he's, I guess, turning and falling down. Um, those are not physically incapacitating hits, right? The bad guy got hit in the leg, and he was obviously clearly able to move from where he was inside the house to the outside in an attempt to escape and get away. He's still able to move his arms. He's still able to do a lot of stuff, right? So neither of them were physically incapacitated. They were what I would classify as being mentally incapacitated. They were no longer mentally able to stay in the fight. They had both experienced enough of pain to demotivate them and get them out of the fight. They didn't want any more. Um, what if the bad guy did not retreat out the house? What if the bad guy decided to push forward and go into that space, go into that room? What would this guy have been able to do? His mobility would be affected, right? Because he's been shot in the foot, and it's apparently shattered his foot to the point where he needed to have pins and stuff put into his foot after surgery. Um, but his arms are still working, right? He's still able to um, move his torso around and reorientate himself. But would he have been able? Would he have been mentally able to start doing that, or would he be done and out of the fight and be submitting to the bad guy as he comes in there? Um, and that is something that I don't think that you can fully train into a person. I think it's something that fighting mindset is something that people either have or they don't. I think it can be refined in some people. I think it can be tweaked some. But there's just some people I just don't think that they have that fight in them. And I think this guy's probably one of them. Which, I mean, him shooting at the bad guy, you'd think, oh no, he's got the fight in him. Again, I think that was when he was just returning fire as a reflex. I don't think that he was really wanting to do the thing. Was willing to do it. And he even says, and later on, that he's glad the bad guy is alive because he didn't want to kill anyone. So, as I said, a lot of gunfights where the good guys win is just fortuitous outcomes. That's it. Just good luck. And this guy's lucky that things went in his favor, because if not, that bad guy could have murdered him, his girlfriend, and his roommate slash friend, and may have never gotten caught for it had he not been shot and was unable to escape. May have been one of those unsolvable crimes. All right, not much else to talk about. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.